You know it's time to do it major. Here's to the hustlers, the movers and shakers. Get up on your grind, don't let the haters get ya. I know that you got a vision, now it's time to deliver. Yeah, giving you the tools, helping you to grow. Level up, time to shine like you never did before. Let them know, more than a podcast, it's a mindset. You can do anything, you just gotta keep grinding. Let's go. The entrepreneur adventure. Hey, the entrepreneur adventure. You ready?
I'm so excited for today's podcast and everything you are going to learn with us. Today, we have speaker, author, success coach, entrepreneur, Antonio Neves.
So my last 3 years in New York City, I was a correspondent on a business show with NBC, and we interviewed these amazing CEOs, entrepreneurs, founders, et cetera. And one thing that I was really blown away by them was, one, their commitment to leadership and development, but also a lot of them, what they had in common is they all worked with the coach directly on what they were doing. And I found towards the end of my television career that I was more fired up working with and developing specifically younger professionals than I was on camera anymore, than I was interviewing people. So I decided to make this bold leap after 12 years in the television industry to pursue leadership and development work as a coach. I knew I wanted to eventually speak as well, and I wanted to write books like I do today. That was probably the scariest thing I ever did in my life because, again, on paper, I was successful. The income was good. I was living in New York City. And I decided just to change everything. And I moved to Los Angeles to pursue this. But that's when I learned one of those key lessons, that one of those hard lessons for people to hear. And that is, first, sometimes just because you're good at something doesn't mean that you're supposed to be doing it. Right? Because we all can excel at a variety of things, but just because you're good at something doesn't mean that you're supposed to be doing it. I was a good sales representative. I was a great host, a great journalist, and I'm still those things. And there was something else that I wanted to do. I knew that life offered up an adventure. I wanted to try something new. I knew that I could always go back to television, but I knew once I had different responsibilities, I didn't know if I'd be able to try some other things. So I decided, if you will, to bet on myself, knowing I could always go back if I wanted to. But here we are about 10 years in, and I haven't gone back yet, even though I still get to have fun on camera and use all those television skills to my advantage.
No regrets.
How did you walk yourself, Antonio, through? I find a lot of people, especially if they have the entrepreneurial gene, if they have that excitement in them, we can oftentimes find things that we would be good at, that we at least we have the potential to be good at. And it may be something we're actually pretty interested in. But there's a difference, like you said, between, hey, you could be like this and you could be good at it, but there's the thing that you're kind of supposed to do that you can commit to. How did you get yourself? Because again, you're succeeding, you're winning, you're climbing up the rungs of a pretty successful ladder to get yourself to be you know what, I think I'm supposed to be over here, to the point where I'm willing to not just be interested in it, but to commit, to move across the country from one major city to the next and go all in on it. How did you get yourself to the knowledge of I'm going to commit to this? This is worthy of me making some big changes.
Yeah, I think it's a couple of things. One, I've always have had the spirit of adventure. I got from a small town in Michigan, one of those towns that people typically don't leave. I was a first generation college student. So everything was kind of novel to me. It's been an adventure. But in terms of people trying to figure out what they're good at and what they excel at, there's a book that I highly recommend. It's by the author Gay Hendricks. And the name of the book is The Big Leap. And he talks about these 4 areas that we can exist in life. And let me just break them down for you real quick. First, we can exist in what's called the zone of incompetence. That's pretty much self-explanatory. We shouldn't be doing anything. By the way, this is going to really hit business owners. The zone of incompetence, that's stuff that we have no business doing. Right now, from your business perspective, there are things that you're just not good at. I'm not going to file my own taxes. I have an accountant for that. I'm incompetent at that, Then there's something called the zone of competence. That's something that we're good at. But it's probably other people are better at it, or it's not the best use of our time. I can book my travel, I can book hotels, but with my responsibilities, it's not always the best use of my time. There are other things that I can do. And then there's something called, this is the tricky one. This is called the zone of excellence. This is something that we actually excel at, something that we're actually good at, but we don't enjoy it. I was a good sales representative. I could probably be the senior vice president of North American cheese right now for Kraft Foods if I would have stayed with that profession. So the zone of excellence is a tricky one where a lot of people exist, but they don't necessarily enjoy it. But the magic place that Gay Hendricks talks about in this book, The Big Leap, is something called the zone of genius. That is that place where we have this unique skill set, where we have a gift like no other. It's that place where time just kind of disappears. For some people, that's sales. For some people, that's writing. For some people, that's logistic or operations, you name it. It's just that place where we just excel at. And so I invite people to think about, where are they existing right now in those four quadrants of incompetence, competence, excellence, and genius, and see if at all possible you can spend as much time as possible existing in your zone of genius. It's almost impossible to spend all of your time in your zone of genius. Like me speaking on stages, put me in front of 5,000 people, 3,000 people, I'm good to go. It's my zone of genius. That does not happen every single day. But if you can spend at least, oh man, if you can get 40% of your time in your zone of genius, or 50%, that would be amazing. And I bet both of you right now can probably think about areas that are zone of incompetences for you, or zone of competences for you, that you probably wish you probably spent less time in. We all can as business owners, but early on, let's be real, sometimes you got to do a little bit of everything, if not everything.
And that's one of the things I want to ask you about, as somebody is a new entrepreneur, or they're an employee looking to go out and pursue their entrepreneur dream. When do you know you can afford to start focusing on those areas that's where you're excellent, or where you're a genius, and start hiring or figuring out another solution for those areas of incompetence?
It's a really great question. Well, for me, I felt like at some point in my entrepreneurial journey, when I was doing things on my own, that my creativity was being stifled. It was being stifled because I was spending so much time doing logistics, doing so much time doing operations. And I want to say it was just a few years ago that I outsourced a good portion of those things. I felt like the quality of the main work that I was delivering as a speaker, as a facilitator, as a writer, was being compromised by me doing these other things. And let's be clear, it was scary for me to invest in having contractors, freelancers that I worked with to do these things, because I was like, oh no, the money's here, it's just going to go away. But I found that, funny enough, investing money in these folks to do what they're great at, what they actually want to do, actually gave me so much more creative space to create, that I had better ideas, things were happening. I could actually over deliver for clients, and my income actually went up after I made those investments, even though at the time it was the scariest thing that I could do. I'm not going to say that the income went up immediately, but over time it did. It's the scariest thing, I think, for business owners, especially if you consider yourself a small business owner like I do, to make those investments, whether it's in a software service, whether it's in certain people or resources. But I found that it's actually opened up so much space for me. So I won't be wasting time on those things that aren't essential.
Now, are you able to afford to do this because you'd saved up enough money from your other careers to be able to invest over a period of time? Or are you still working during this time and using money from other areas of employment and sources of income?
Yeah, well, today I'm fortunate enough that my income from the work that I do, handles everything. But I think something that's really important for a lot of business owners to hear is that, and I wish I was, and I talk about this in the book, I wish I was more open early on in my entrepreneur journey of sharing that at times I've held full-time jobs. Like when I broke off to become a speaker, a coach, and an author, let's be real, there were times where I could not handle all of my responsibilities solely on that income. So there are times I held full-time jobs. At one point, I worked for this big international personal branding platform called About.me. And I pretty much commuted to San Francisco every week for that job, on top of my work when I was traveling to do speaking and coaching, et cetera. There's time here in Los Angeles where I worked as the narrative director for a big e-commerce agency that worked with health and wellness brands, again, to support my family and my dream. So I wish I would have shared that more, because I think a lot of business owners feel like they're failing or they're doing something wrong if they have to have a full-time job to support them. But I like to think about it as, this willingness to be your own benefactor. If you think about artists, and we can go back to Mozart, we can think about people like Picasso, we can think about people like Harper Lee, great writers. At some point, many of these great artists, they had benefactors. These were patrons that supported the work that they did by writing checks, by giving people places to live, by providing space to work, etc. And I've been fortunate, as I just mentioned, to have benefactors over the course of my career, but my benefactors were my full-time jobs. Again, on top of the work that I was doing in the evenings, in the early mornings. I like to think about dream jobs like this. A dream job is a job that you absolutely love, or it's a job that allows you to do what you love. And that's what my full-time jobs did for me. It's not sexy, it's not glamorous, but if you're really committed to something, you find a way to make that happen. And so for that man or woman that's listening, I invite you to maybe before you go all in, which people are going to tell you have to do, you don't have to. I get the thought process behind going all in. Don't get me wrong. For me, it's a little bit different when I have, a wife and a couple of kids and homes and different things I'm responsible for. But for that person who thinks they have to go all in, I want to let you know that you don't. At some point, you will. At some point, you will. And I had to come to that point in my career when I was able to say, you know what, I no longer have to have a 9 to 5. But please, I invite you not to be ashamed to have that 9 to 5 while you get your business off the ground.